Hi, if you are a taxpayer in Aiken County, or if you are concerned about public education right here in Aiken County, this is the broadcast for you. My guest today is Aiken County Public Schools Comptroller, Mr. Trey Traxler, and we'll be talking about the tentative 2012-2013 budget. You don't want to miss it. Hello and welcome inside a brand new segment of Education Matters. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. This will be a very informative broadcast, so I suggest if you don't have your paper and pencil with you, go ahead and get it, because we want you to be informed about the process as it relates to the budget for Aiken County Public Schools. This is an opportunity for you to get some information ahead of time before that final vote is cast so that you can provide your feedback, all right? Very, very capable comptroller, Mr. Trey Traxler is my guest today, and in just a moment we'll get into our discussion for today. But of course, we'd like to thank the sponsors of Education Matters, and they are Westby's Products and Services, creator of that awesome seasoning, Don Seasoning Delight. Also, Bryant Insurance Agency, located on Daughtery Road in Aiken, South Carolina. Also, the Will Lou Gray Opportunity School out of West Columbia. Thanks so much for your support as well. And then, of course, we'd like to thank those individuals I call friends of Education Matters, and they are Betty and Isaac Rucker out of Aiken, South Carolina, Willie and Cynthia Wright, also from Aiken, and of course, Leroy and Teresa Myrick. Had a little brain freeze there. Very good friends, all of you. Thanks so much for your support. Okay, I'm going to quickly move along because we have lots of information to cover today. I do have a reminder for you. Project graduation. If you have a graduating high school senior from Aiken High School or South Aiken High School, project graduation will take place on Friday, June the 1st from 11:30 p.m. Yes, that is correct. 11:30 p.m. until the next morning. And this will take place at the Odell Weeks Center in Aiken. Now, this event is just for Area 1 schools. Of course, we have to keep it controllable based on the size of the graduating classes. But the whole point of this event is to keep those graduates safe. I know if you are a parent, you have some anxiety about your child or grandchild driving or engaging in some activities that may compromise their safety. You'll hear more about project graduation next time on Education Matters, but want to go ahead and let you know about that, okay? All right, moving right along to the Education Matters tip of the week. Every week we do provide you with a brand new tip, and here is this week's. Start now looking into summer camps and activities for your children. Believe it or not, this academic year is winding down. Activities that keep your children learning and that are fun, gotta have some fun, they will keep their minds alert during the summer so they are ready once the new academic year begins, all right? Don't just let them waste away during the summer, staying up late, watching reality television programs, sleeping late, not engaging in some type of activity that keeps their mind stimulated, but it's up to you parents, all right? Go ahead and start looking into those activities and camps right now. Some have a cost to them, but there are also some that are free. That is this week's tip of the week. All right. I was very happy to know that my guest sitting to my right remembers that that sound means it's Word of the Week time inside of Education Matters. And here is this week's Word of the Week. And it's a brand new one for me. Foment. Foment. 2 syllables. The accent is on that second syllable. Mint. Foment. Okay? It is a verb, and it means to promote the growth or arousal of, to stir up or instigate. Okay? Here is this week's sentence. She loves to foment trouble, but is nowhere around to help solve the problems. I know some people like that. They love to get people stirred up, but when it's time to roll up those sleeves and get some work out of them, they are nowhere to be found. Foment. Hopefully you will not have this word used to describe you, but that is this week's Education Matters Word of the Week. Now, if you've missed for the past several weeks our tip of the week or word of the week, you know where to go, I hope by now, and that is to my website, edmat.com. Okay? All right, after a few words from our sponsor, we'll come back and talk with Aiken County Public Schools Comptroller, Mr. Trey Traxler. We'll be right back.
The Will Lou Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
Tired of hearing automated answering services when you have questions about auto, home, renters, motorcycle, or life insurance? Call the Bryan Insurance Agency, where you will always receive a representative ready to answer your questions and provide friendly customer service just for you. Call today for a quick quote at 803-642-8505 or visit us at 909 Daugherty Road in Aiken. Takia and her staff are ready to serve you.
When it comes to grilling, I'm the man. Using Dawn Seasoning Delight, I'm the grill master.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Bi-Lo, Food Line, Reeds, and Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Dawn Seasoning Delight is so good.
I lead a busy life, but I still have to make sure my family eats right. And everybody loves Dawn's Seasoning Delight. I use Dawn's on meats and vegetables. It's healthy, tastes great, and it's simple to use. It's like having a chef in a bottle.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Bi-Lo, Food Line, Reeds, and Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Welcome back inside of the broadcast. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. Today inside of the studio, I have with us no stranger to Education Matters, and that is the Comptroller for Aiken County Public Schools, Mr. Trey Traxler. Welcome back inside of the broadcast.
Glad to be back.
Yes, I know you say that to be nice, but it's a very stressful time right now for you, and I want to applaud you for taking the time to be here today. Of course, with the Aiken County Board of Education, it is our mission to try to be as transparent as possible, especially as it relates to our budget. And right now, we are right in the middle of our budget process, and we want you to be involved in the process. We know that not all of you have the time nor the ability to come to the school board meetings, but I want to let you know that with this broadcast, we're presenting to you exactly what was presented at our recent school board meeting so that you too can get the information and have the time to offer feedback. So Trey, we're going to turn it over to you, and we want to share with our viewers the process and where we are at this point and where we will go from here. So let's get rolling.
All right. We at each budget workshop or board meeting that we've had, we've updated the board on the budget calendar and where we stand currently. And to date, we have had 5 or 6 budget workshops in addition to various other budget discussions. Last night, May 15th, we had another budget workshop to discuss our tentative budget. And in coming days, one day next week, our budget will be advertised in a local newspaper as required by law. And it'll discuss the millage rates or the tentative millage rates for the coming year, budget numbers and things of that nature. And also announce to the public that we'll be having a public hearing on the budget on June 12th and a public hearing for millage. And also this year, the board added June 5th as a date for the public to come out and voice their opinion on our budget. And the June 5th meeting is strictly for budget input from the public.
And so let me just underscore or to reinforce what you've said. So up to this point, we have already had 5 budget workshops that were pretty much open to the public, correct?
They were open, yes.
All
ma'am.
right, totally open to the public. And this board has even added an additional meeting to give you, the public, an opportunity to voice your concerns or your opinions. Now, you said with the advertisement, does that mean that with us having to advertise our budget by May 28th, that doesn't mean that it's final at that point?
Our budget won't be finalized until June 26th. And even at that point, the budget's a living animal. So it changes throughout the year. We've had years where we've received additional allocation mid-year or unfortunately lost allocation mid-year and had to adjust our budget accordingly. But June 26th is the date for our final original 2012-13 budget approval.
Okay, before we go to the next slide, I want to ask just a general question. At the very beginning, I posed a question to our viewers or put a disclaimer. If they are a taxpayer or if they are concerned about public education in Aiken, they should care about this particular broadcast. Do you have anything to add to that? Why should people even care about the information we're about to share today?
Well, this school district is the second largest employer in the county, and we serve over 24,000 students each year. We have almost 40 schools and centers throughout the district. We're the size of Rhode Island. So this affects everyone, whether they're a parent or grandparent or don't have children. Their neighbors attend our school. So it's important to everyone. It's the backbone of the community.
I like it. All right. So what are we asking for right now?
Well, our Fund 1 budget is, our Fund 1 is our general operating fund. And we have a variety of funds. We get federal dollars and state dollars, but our largest fund is Fund 1, and it's currently at $158,146,000. And that was prior to last night's budget discussion, and we'll cover that in a second. But what we included in that budget were they were must items, items that we have no discretion over, such as the state increasing the employer portion of retirement, or the state increasing our health insurance premiums, or the state requiring us to provide a 2% increase to employees. Those things are must items. They were included in there. And we also included in that number, our tentative budget before last night, any existing items. So we had some items that had been funded in the past out of federal dollars, and those dollars would no longer be available next year. So, and we felt that those positions and programs were important enough to save in the budget, so those were included. But there were no bells and whistles, anything of that nature in the budget. We showed that there were no priority items. Throughout the budget process, we've received input from principals, teachers, citizens, board members, the administration, and try to prioritize those. There were a lot of suggestions, many or most or all with merit, but we still had to have priority. We aren't dealing with an endless pot of money.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
Well, and I want to interject here, because when a citizen looks at a budget of $158 million to run schools for public education, you have individuals who say, why isn't that enough money to educate children? There was not always that amount of money, and the public education process moved forward. What's your thought on that?
Well, we have 40 schools and centers throughout the district that we're having to fund. The state sets class size limits for us, so we have to abide by that. And typically, we're lower than those, as are most districts, to try to keep class sizes low. But of that tentative budget, approximately 90% is tied up in salaries and payroll taxes and health insurance premiums and state retirement, things of that nature. So these aren't extras. Most of it is tied up, as I stated, 90% of it in salaries and fringe. And then that other 10%, much of it is tied up in energy costs for the buildings and water and sewer and instructional supplies and janitorial supplies. So it's, which does not leave us a lot of wiggle room whenever we do need to cut.
That's right.
Without having to affect salaries in some manner.
And that is a point we definitely need for you to understand right now. So far in this discussion, 90% of the Aiken County Public Schools budget is directly tied to salaries, fringe benefits, etc. People in their positions. So when a school district, and I want to also add that we're not in this by ourselves. There are school districts all over this state and country who are in the same situation, right?
Correct.
So it's certainly not unique to us, school districts, to have to go through this type of process where they're trying to balance budgets and making cuts. So again, with most of your budget being comprised of salaries, it makes it very difficult to then try and reduce costs that then don't impact people, jobs, okay? So we definitely wanted to make that clear.
That's correct.
And then you may have those who say, well, how do you get yourself in a situation where you're needing to balance your budget? I mean, handle a shortfall. There are some also legislative some laws and that we're having to contend with that makes it pretty restrictive for school districts.
There are. We're Fund 1 in our general operating fund. Our option for bringing in additional revenues is increasing operating millage. That's pretty much it. On the other side, we could cut costs to balance the budget, or we have a fund balance, a contingency fund that good business practice is we ought to keep a reserve of about 2 months operations in case there are mid-year budget cuts or when there is funding shortfall throughout the year to help us pay our bills. And fund balance for this year is approximately $24 million, which sounds like
that sounds like a lot of money.
It is. It is if you're just looking at that one number. But whenever you look at the grand scheme of things with the district and how large our budget is and the ebbs and flows throughout the year of finances, it's definitely needed. And what I've cautioned our board several times is that even though you have this pot here, these are non-recurring dollars. These are dollars that have accumulated over time. It's not a representation of net income during any given year. So if the board used fund balance to balance the budget, non-recurring dollars to pay for recurrent costs, we would be in a situation where it gradually decreases over the years.
That's right. And what makes it extremely important for taxpayers is when we continue to deplete our fund balance, then that affects our bond rating. So that means that in order for us to borrow money, in a sense, we would have to borrow money at a higher rate, which then makes an impact to the taxpayer.
Correct.
Okay. All right. What's next?
We presented to the board last night a schedule of past budget cuts, and we went back to 0809 and wanted to show a list of cuts that, because of state budget cuts and not having the finances available, budget cuts that the board approved, most of them have not been restored at this point. So it's not a matter of saying, well, we cut this pot of money a few years ago, we need money now, let's go cut that again. Those dollars have not been added back to the budget.
That's
in most
right.
cases.
That's right. So when people are questioning whether or not we have done our due diligence in Aiken County to try to cut costs, this is exactly what we've done. And as a matter of fact, when we had to do them the first year or so, what you're saying is we kept them cut. Because that slide is very difficult for people to see, let's pull out some of those that might be pretty interesting for our viewers to understand.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, we have a long list, and this is a combination of 3 or 4 years cuts, but this is a major one, increasing pupil-teacher ratios. We increased pupil-teacher ratios several years ago to balance the budget, and we may have increased class sizes depending on the grade by 1 or 2 or 3 students, but we haven't had the dollars available to go back and decrease to those original levels. So, and as we mentioned earlier, with 90% of our Fund 1 budget being tied up in salaries and fringe, it's tough to have cuts or reductions that don't affect salaries. And this is one that affected positions. So that was a major one.
And then that very first one, we did eliminate positions
Yes.
at the district level.
Yes, and that's several years worth of reductions there. There weren't 20 in one given year. But yes, over that time, we've had 20 positions reduced at our district office. There are several other smaller items on here too, but we look for big ticket items as well as items that may be considered nickel and dime. We look continually, and each year, are there ways to save? Can we reduce a budget here?
Right, right. And I want to say too, real quickly, that in one of those tough decisions that not just Aiken County but several districts had to make was to do things like furlough teachers, which is godly awful. But when you again go back to a large percentage of a school district's budget being tied up in salaries, that's one of those awful decisions that sometimes has to be made. So in just a few moments, after a few words from our sponsors, we'll come back and continue this discussion. We're trying to paint the picture for you and also talk about recommendations that this administration has made for the board to consider. My name is Donna Moore Wesby. We'll be right back.
Tired of hearing automated answering services when you have questions about auto, home, renters, motorcycle, or life insurance? Call the Bryant Insurance Agency, where you will always receive a representative ready to answer your questions and provide friendly customer service just for you. Call today for a quick quote at 803-642-8505 or visit us at 909 Daughtery Road in Aiken. Takia and her staff are ready to serve you.
Next time on Education Matters with me, Donna Moore Wesby, we'll talk with representatives from Project Graduation. What is Project Graduation? I'm glad you asked. It is an annual event held right here in Aiken County for the students of Aiken High School and South Aiken. And what they do is try to provide a safe haven for graduates on graduation night. So tune in next time with me, Donna Moore Wesby, right here on ASTV Channel 95.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Wesby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.
Hi, my name is Donna Moore Westby, host of Education Matters. Did you know that all of the previous broadcasts of Education Matters are available to you right from your very own computer? Let's take a look. All you need to do is go on your computer to my website, edmat.com, of course with 2 T's, and there you will see my website. This is my actual website, okay? What you'll find on my website are a variety of articles. You can connect with me on Facebook right in here as you see. We also have listed our word of the week and our tip of the week, okay? But if you scroll back up at the top and click on videos, then it will redirect you to my Aiken Standard Television Education Matters website. Now what I want you to see is that over here to the right, episodes 1 through 25 and then 26 through the most recent. Also, as you can see, we also have the live connection, but all of these broadcasts are available to you to watch from your very own home or church so that you can conduct workshops and still get the valuable information brought to you right here inside of Education Matters with me, Donna Moore Westby, right here on ASTV Channel 95.
The Will Lou Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
Welcome back inside of the broadcast. All right, Trey, we just talked about some of the cuts and the savings measures that Aiken County School Board has put in place over the past few years to try to balance the budget. Now we're at a point where the administration, the superintendent and her staff, has made some recommendations to the board of things that they believe we really must do. Talk about those.
Well, the tentative budget before board discussion last night included must items, retirement, health insurance premiums. It also included a 2% increase for all employees. But based on the input that we received from the board, principals, teachers, citizens, the administration prioritized a list and looked at our needs as well as some wants, but many of the items that we've recommended, or most of the items here, are must almost. We need them so bad that they're almost a must item. So one recommendation that we had was, because we have significant technology needs, we have a platform migration that has to be completed within the next 2 to 3 years, and we're trying to complete wireless overlay at all of our schools, paying for that out of fund balance.
Help our viewers understand why this particular item is so crucial for us right now.
Well, it's just the age of our system. The software that we're using now is over 20 years old. We have aging computers. Being able to have computers and systems that work with new softwares and things of that nature is very important now. Yeah,
I know one of the things that convinced me to vote for this particular item is when we look at the length of time it takes for work orders to be processed. It could be, I think I heard 45 days to maybe even weeks because of the age of our system, but also we have an issue with our system. There's several issues, but our system is so old that there are no longer people who will work on that kind of system. You know, having the parts, and I don't know all the technology terminology either, but it's definitely outdated, and we had to do something about it. If we're talking about staying on the cutting edge of technology in our classrooms with our curriculum, et cetera.
That's right. And we mentioned earlier that fund balance was a non-recurring pot of money. These are one-time or non-recurring type costs. So
Right.
hence the recommendation to use fund balance.
And if I could interject here too, because I know school districts all over are having to do the same thing, and that is, it becomes a very difficult process and very frustrating when you're trying to move a district forward and not impact student achievement, because of course student achievement is our #1 priority, but you still have fiscal responsibility. You still have to balance a budget, but you still want to move the district forward, certainly have curriculum that is advancing to meet the needs of our children, to help them be competitive in a global society. So there are many aspects to this process that makes it very difficult and sometimes quite frustrating. I just wanted to add that in.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So how do we come to the discussion of having to possibly raise taxes?
Well, even before looking at the options that the board discussed last night, we were looking at a shortfall of approximately $480,000.
Okay.
And to absorb that, the options are to increase revenues, go up on taxes, or to cut costs. And we looked at cost-cutting measures. There may be a few items out there that aren't salary related, but it would significantly hinder operations to cut those. We showed earlier that we haven't replenished many of those cuts from past years.
Right.
So in addition to that, there are several priority items that the board looked at addressing as well. We have Common Core that many people have heard about. And
those are standards that will be coming down from the state, but also many of the states in the United States has already tried to implement.
I believe 45 or 46 have implemented Common Core. So to not fall behind there, we had a recommendation to create new curriculum coach positions to help address Common Core. We mentioned technology needs the actual equipment a few minutes ago, but our staff, when you look at the size of our staff and consider our student body and the geographic size of the district, we're significantly understaffed as far as technology needs.
Okay,
That was
all
another option that we recommended.
So we're talking about approximately 1.5 mils increasing taxes to cover our current shortfall of the 480,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
And additional millage to cover any other options that the board approves.
All right, so let's talk about some of that.
Okay. Before we leave this slide, I'd like to add too that I mentioned earlier that we've lost some allocations. We aren't able to use some federal dollars for existing expenditures. And one of those was first grade pupil teacher ratios. We kept it low with use of federal dollars. And we did propose to the board last night allocating additional federal dollars, so at 9 of the schools we'd be able to provide an additional first grade teacher there.
Okay. But even at that, that's just on an annual basis. That's 1 year at a time.
That's correct.
Okay. Other considerations?
Well, in going through this process, there are several things that we've reminded the board. We're capped on operating millage. This isn't an endless, unlimited amount of operating millage that we could go up. Aiken County is capped at 9.3 mils for this coming year. We could increase our millage by that amount. We don't have to increase that amount, but it's up to that amount.
Okay, real quickly here, for those who are just getting into this process of understanding, what is mills, what is millage rate, and how does it then translate to a taxpayer?
These are taxes.
Okay.
Operating taxes. Now, Several years ago, with the statewide penny sales tax that was enacted by Act 388, it removed school operating property taxes off of a primary residence. So if the board goes up 9.3 mils or something less than that, it'll have no effect on a primary residence. It will affect other types of property, business properties, rental property, vehicles, boats, things of that nature. But an operating mill is a school operating tax increase.
Okay, all right.
Our district has not increased operating millage since 2009-10. We did increase debt service millage to help pay off bonds for building construction, but operating millage has not increased since 09-10. In comparing our district to other districts throughout the state, we're in the lower third or lower quarter, whether you compare operating millage, debt service millage, or total millage. Aiken, the year we're in, operating millage is 131.6 mils, which is approximately 40 mils less than the state average.
If we could, I know it may take you a second, let's actually show that particular slide to our viewers, because I think it's very relevant to our discussion to see that while we might be talking about a slight increase and no one wants taxes to increase, when we compare ourselves to other school districts in our area, certainly in our state, Aiken fares pretty well.
Yes.
Trey?
Well, we have a spreadsheet here that shows.
Let's increase the size on that. The view.
I think
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
That's about all I can do there.
Okay, that's good.
This shows, and we've sorted in from highest to lowest operating millage, but we show each school district in the state and their operating debt service or total millage for the 2010-11 school year. There are some districts that you'll see highlighted here, and those districts receive a penny sales tax for capital projects, and we wanted to identify those as well. But the right-hand column, we have the rank as far as highest operating millage to lowest. And as you scroll down, you'll see several districts that we're compared to oftentimes, varying size districts. And of that, Aiken in 2010-11 had an operating millage that was lower than 64 school districts out of 85. Our debt service millage was lower than the state average, and our total millage in 2010 was 161 mils. The state average was 207 mils.
Now, why we wanted to highlight that, it's not to say that, because I know there are some who say, well, we're in Aiken and that's all that I'm concerned about. But what ends up happening is when you go to those other school districts whose millage rates are higher, you tend to see better facilities with the latest technology. They're able to even we're looking at the data in terms of student achievement, and you're able to see some increases in their student achievement because they're able to get additional funds to do more programs or to focus on some other curriculum needs, whereas districts that are really struggling for every little penny, it really kind of puts us at a disadvantage. So this is why this matters to you, and we really need for you to pay attention to this discussion, because we can't on one side say we need for our children to do better, we need for these schools to do better, if we're not also dedicated to ensuring that the resources are there and that we're part of ensuring those resources are there to help accomplish those goals.
That's correct. And our instructional department in recent meetings has compared us to some other districts and seen the number of positions and type of positions. They have instructional or curriculum coach positions that we don't have at this point, and it's because they have the additional dollars to spend on positions like that. We also provided a comparison for our board that Aiken County ranks among the highest in the state in per capita income and among the lowest in the state in unemployment rates. So the combination of tax rates, per capita income, and unemployment rates are all favorable here.
Okay, all right. On last evening at our board meeting, we looked through, and I'm so glad we finally did this, but in order for us to come up with the current recommendations, let's go ahead to that particular slide and show where we went line item by line item at the level, what we call budget one, level one budget recommendations. Let's quickly go through some of those.
Well, as you mentioned, the board went through line by line each of these items, and unfortunately I can't zoom in anymore here,
Okay,
but
we can.
we identified several items as non-recurring or recurring. We have estimated the cost on those items and how much millage, if the board decided to go that route, whether to add that option or to pay for it out of fund balance or operating millage, how much it would cost. And our board last night went through and discussed each of the items on this list and discussed the merits and pros and cons of it and the cost, and came up with a pretty comprehensive list based on that. And several of these items, there were compromises. For instance,
Exactly.
one FTE was recommended, or excuse me, 2 FTE were recommended at East Aiken School of the Arts.
An FTE, full-time
Full-time
employee.
equivalent
Okay,
teacher.
equivalent.
So there was a request for 2 additional teachers at the school. The compromise was the board tentatively approved 1 teacher for the school. And there were several other situations of that. Kate on here.
Career and technology education.
That's right. These were additional career and technology teacher allocations that were requested rather than 5+ positions at a cost of $300,000. The board wanted to drop that allocation and the cost by 1/3.
All right, in just a few moments, we'll come back and talk more about the budget recommendations, and we'll tell you how you can still provide input on the 2012-2013 Aiken County Public Schools budget. We'll be right back.
When it come to grilling, I'm the man. Using Don seasoning delight, I'm the grill master.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Buy Low, Food Line, Reeds, and Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Don Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Don seasoning delight is so good.
The Aiken Standard has served advertisers' needs in the CSRA for more than 100 years. In the new multimedia world, we offer a host of services with that same level of dedication to generating business for our clients. Everything from broadcast commercials, corporate events, and training videos, or even if you want your event streamed live across the world using our mobile, state-of-the-art production studio. Our staff has the skills and experience to take your project from concept to completion. Call us at 803-648-2311.
The Will Lou Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Wesby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.
All right, Trey, so tell us where we are right now. Help us recap what the board has tentatively approved.
Well, after last night's meeting, the we have a tentative budget that I'm revising and will be advertised. But tentatively approved items include those must items that I mentioned earlier, including a 2% increase for all employees, paying for the technology needs, those one-time needs, and some AP textbooks from fund balance, paying for security cameras from our building fund, and those would go to schools that currently have no camera coverage. And then increasing millage by 4.6 mils in order to balance the budget while adding some additional technology staff and technology contracted services, 3 curriculum coaches instead of the 4 that were originally requested, additional CADE allocations, 1 teacher at East Aiken, the equivalent of 1 teacher for the strings program instead of 2 that were originally requested. We have a vacant accounting position that would be upgraded, a new volunteer coordinator position to work with schools.
And mentoring, helping
yes.
us develop our mentoring program district-wide.
We had 3 high schools that didn't have a full-time attendance aide, so giving those high schools full-time attendance aides, because attendance is taken every period of the day, and that's tied to our funding. We want as accurate numbers as possible, and increasing the assistant principal pay scale.
All right, now we have to pose the question. People who are not directly affiliated with the schools, who aren't volunteering in the schools, who may not even have children in the schools, may not appreciate that bullet, because it looks like you're asking us to fund more positions when companies all over the world are cutting back and reducing. Why should our community support this?
Well, again, these aren't bells and whistles. These are things that the board wasn't forced to do by the state legislature. We did have discretion over it, the district did, but these are still must items that need to be addressed now. We discussed earlier Common Core, and it's on the way, and the need for curriculum coaches, and the need to increase our CADE allocations, because at high schools, they've been the same for years and years, so increasing those allocations. And East Aiken is now the school for the arts. They need additional FTE, additional teacher allocation that a regular elementary school may not need.
Right. And again, if you break down each of those positions, they all tie back in some form or fashion to student achievement, whether it's allowing us to have more funding for career and technology education. We know the data shows that 98% of our students in Aiken County who attend the Career and Technology Center graduate. So this directly ties back to our graduation rates. It's keeping our students engaged to where they want to stay in school. So of course, that's a primary consideration for the board. Those curriculum coaches, we're talking about trying to remain on the cutting edge, not being a state that's left behind or behind everyone else in terms of that Common Core standards for all of our subjects. Even with the arts, it's been proven with what's happening at East Aiken and certainly in other school districts that when students engage in the arts, it also helps with their abilities in math and science, because all of that goes together, and it helps keep them in school. So again, the volunteer position, as we talked about, we know that some of our children come from challenging backgrounds and may not have mentors that can really help them to understand the value of education, as well as helping them with life skills. We're trying to get a handle on that in the schools. And in some instances, the schools, and this is from a board member perspective, we're having to do things that really should come from the home. So if we had a little bit more support from homes and family life, then some of the things that schools are now having to pay for we wouldn't have that as an issue. But we'll talk about that on another broadcast, okay? So help me get back on track, Trey. So where do we go from here? Let's talk about that, that 4.6. I really like the fact that we looked at the millage rate for each individual item to help us gauge ourselves to not go, to that 9.3.
That's correct. That's correct. And the board went through it. And there we also had additional levels of priority, things that again, they weren't without merit, but they didn't have as high of a priority as some of these other items. We had to draw the line somewhere, essentially.
Yes. So what's this going to mean to the taxpayer?
The cost to taxpayers, we have a slide here that shows the effect on taxpayers on different properties. And as I mentioned earlier, an operating millage increase has no effect on primary residences. But we have the cost per mill, what the cost would be to a taxpayer per 100,000 if the board increased by that cap, the 9.3 mills, and if the board increases by the 4.6 mills that's tentatively approved, what the cost is. So 6% properties are business properties, rental properties, things of that nature. A 4.6 mil increase would cost a business owner $27.60 per 100,000 on the business. And an individual below there, we have cars, trucks, RVs. An individual will have to pay additional taxes on their car.
So let's use that example. If I have a car that is valued, all right, assessed at say 15 or let's use $20,000, make it an even number. So I'm only looking at $1.20 increase for that car or truck?
Well, the third line here, we have a 4.6 mil increase would cost $2.76 per 10,000. So if for your $15 car or $15,000 car, it would be 1.5 times that. You're putting me on the spot.
I knew you could handle it.
A little bit more than $4 is per year is what you would pay in additional taxes on a $15,000 car.
And I believe most people would say that's worth it to keep our kids in school and to provide what's necessary to help them have a quality education. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yes, ma'am. And this information is also posted on our website, on our homepage. We have a slideshow. This same slideshow is on there with that page that shows the cost to taxpayers.
All right. So what are our next steps in this process?
Our next steps, as I mentioned, we have a budget advertisement next week, and probably next Friday, that'll be in the local newspaper. June 5th and June 12th. June 12th is a regularly scheduled board meeting, so we'll have all the usual festivities there. But
I like the way you say that, festivities. Somehow I don't feel like I'm at a party.
but June 5th and June 12th, taxpayers will have the opportunity to speak to the budget, with that June 5th meeting being strictly for budget input. This is an ongoing process. Currently, the state Senate is in budget deliberations. So we have to monitor the legislative process.
Constantly.
Constantly. We receive almost daily updates from a variety of sources and are constantly checking the internet and newspapers throughout the state just to gather as much info as possible and see what effect it may have on our budget.
Right.
Allocations may increase and may decrease. We may have new requirements as far as salaries, whether it's teacher salaries or teacher salaries plus a step, something of that nature. So we have to keep a pretty close eye on things throughout the process. And as I mentioned, our final budget approval is scheduled for June 26th. So we'll be working on that too over the next month. And there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes along with that, setting our salary schedule and things of that nature.
What's having quickly gone through a lot of this information today, there's so much to comprehend, and we've given a somewhat high-level discussion today. What are our messages to the public that we really want to convey from Aiken County Public Schools, but also, in a sense, on behalf of all the school districts who are going through this same process? What's our message or messages to the public?
Well, I think we want to show, and I believe we're doing that through transparency, that we want to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars and do what's best for our students at the same time. And unfortunately, as you've seen with some of the options here, doing what's best is going to cost additional dollars. It's not something that we could do within our current framework of the budget. But as always, we try to post information timely, so if anyone has a question or if they want to see what happened at last night's meeting that they couldn't attend, we try to post information as timely as possible. There's a financial information link on the homepage of our website. And not just this year's budget info, but we have listings of check disbursements, purchasing card transactions, past audits for the district. There's a lot of information there.
There's a ton of information, and to make it a little easier for you, Education Matters family, again, just go to my website, which is edmat.com, and there to the right you will see an area that says My Favorite Links, and we have the Aiken County Public School website already there for you, and you can click right on there and find all of a plethora of information for you, financial information, but just information on our schools, what have you. It's all there. Trey, I can't say enough about what you do in our district. I pray that you never leave us. It's a lot of information to try to digest and then pull it together to where it makes sense to those of us who work with it every day, but also those of us who don't. So thank you for all that you do. Thanks for coming on the broadcast today. Viewers, please, please, please provide your input. We want your input. The 9 of us can't do it alone. We need for you to feel comfortable in knowing that this particular Board of Education cares about our children. We care about student achievement. We also care about being fiscally responsible. There's no easy decision. One decision impacts another. So when we're talking about increasing taxes, remember, we are taxpayers too, so we don't take this decision very lightly. So read up as much as you can, come to our board meetings so that we can go through this process together. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. Have a great day.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Wesby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.